Karen Martin, and I am the VP of Programming here at Children's Media Association, and I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. CMA is committed to informing, uniting, and supporting so many spaces within children's media, and all of our events are created and produced by such a small army of volunteers. So if you'd like to volunteer and to shape the future of children's media, please consider taking on a role with CMA. As always, we'll be taking questions at the end of this event, so feel free to add those comments. And I want to start this off by saying that I'm thrilled to kick off our first conversation in a brand new series, CMA Jamz. In this series, we'll meet visionary artists who are truly shaping the landscape of children's music, and we'll tap into the process of how they create their most memorable tunes. The incredible Alphabet Rockers is the first group to kick off the series, having won the 2023 Grammy for Best Children's Album, and they are also 4-time Grammy nominees. Their mission is to craft music that ignites transformative change. Let's take a look.
First things first, I show up, ready to be in circle, here to actively listen and be openly verbal. This type of cipher that serves like a meal. We're here to solve problems and hopefully heal. I start by telling the group a little bit about me. I want to get to know you, curiosity is mounting. We're here to build trust so we can speak facts. A heartfelt response for the best impact, see?
The circle is a space to grow, connecting us to a collective glow. Candles get lit, reflect the light, illuminating how we're here to do right. What are we left without? Respect, a little bit of honesty, that restorative justice. What are we left without? Healing, a little bit of empathy, that restorative justice. What are we left without? Love, a little bit of courage and care, that trust is there. What are we left without? Truth, and facing it whenever it confronts us. Without that, ain't no restorative justice.
Alphabet Rockers co-leaders Kaitlin McGaw and Tommy Soulati Shepherd are at the helm of this dynamic group, and not only do they create fabulous music, but they are nationally renowned children's book authors, keynote speakers, and resident artists of esteemed programs such as Othering and Belonging Institute, Destiny Art Center, and High Wave Black Music Incubator. Their music and leadership is built from their combined pedigree of applied research and creative practice. Kaitlin is a Harvard University graduate in African American Studies, and Tommy is a Pacific Conservatory of Theater graduate. Alphabet Rockers use inquiry throughout their creative process that asks how and what is needed to create inclusion and belonging. Welcome, Kaitlin and Tommy.
Thanks so much, Karen.
Hello.
Hi, it's great to have you here. So Kaitlin, I know that you guys are in 2 different places here. Thank you for coming tonight. We're all excited to hear your story. And I think the first question I have is, how did you guys meet, and how did you decide to step into the children's music space?
Wonderful question. And it's great because I'm here in our music studio and Tommy's at a theater production, and hip hop theater is really what brought us together. We met in 2000 in San Francisco when Tommy was premiering a show, which is now presenting in Houston, called Beatbox a Rapperetta. And I had just arrived to the Bay Area. We both had, actually. And we knew we were kind of creatively aligned and creating music that infused hip hop for young people, and lesson plans. And we just continue to play and create and do this kind of work together.
That's awesome. So, I think we've spoken before about how artists start creating music because they're inspired by art or nature or story, but your approach to songwriting is entirely different. What's your motivation that developed a song that sparked change?
Well, I could say that it's one of those people that are, really relentless about their questions and really don't really mind asking uncomfortable questions. That's children. I'll tell you a story. We were in Half Moon Bay, and this is almost the story of how we met our destiny, right? Because there was a child in there that was very, very curious while we were performing a song. Just I was performing, singing, had a microphone, everything, and she walked up while I'm singing and said, "Hey, why are your lips brown?" And I was like, "Why are my lips brown?" I was like, "Hold on, I'm trying to bust right here. Let me do my thing," But I thought about it the whole time. And after the song was over, she came right back up and was like, "Bruh, why are your lips brown?" And I was like, "Because I'm brown." And as I was saying it, it was coming out of my mouth. I was making it up, and then it got more confident. And I was like, "Yes, because I am brown."
Yeah.
Yes.
And at the same time, her younger brother, was probably 4 or 5, said to me, am I brown? And I said, well, let's take a look. What do you see? Because it's not my job to tell this child what their color is, right? It's really about their own perspective of themselves. And he said, I'm brown.
Yeah,
And
I
really,
mean,
yeah.
and really that's he gets to see himself as brown, because we were like, yeah, every shade of skin color is a shade of brown. If you go from the lightest to the darkest of it, then that's what they are.
Oh,
You know,
awesome.
but this kid actually thought that he had this thing that we all lose, where we see each other in each other. But then as we get older, we start to see that, see the differences. He didn't see any difference between the two of us, because he wasn't a black kid. His kids weren't black, but they kind of saw themselves in me. So when we took a selfie together, the kid was like, I almost had dust on my face, because man, yeah, Tommy, I thought me and Tommy looked a little more alike, or a little more of the same. It was interesting.
We realized that we were comfortable having that conversation, that we had curiosity about listening to the question. There's not one answer to the question. And we also noticed that there were people in the room who were very uncomfortable that this child was saying these questions to Tommy. There was a white mom in the room who's kind of like clenching and cringing. And I relate to that. I'm a white woman who's been uncomfortable with my privilege at times, or not known how to talk about these things. But I've been doing this work of anti-racism since I was like 14 years old, and I've made mistakes, and I've learned that it's okay to talk about who we are, because guess what? Skin color isn't dangerous. It's not wrong. And it's okay to be curious about it. And so as we drove back from that trip, and for children's musicians, we spend time commuting to community. Like we really do. We spend time doing this, and we have a lot of time to process. And we said, you know what, this is where we're supposed to be going. Even if it is uncomfortable, we're going to figure out how to write songs that get to these tough conversations, so that there's not ease, but there's love and understanding.
Right. So you take those personal experiences, or the experiences you have in those communities, and you use that to create that change. Is that what you're, okay, that's the essence of that. Yeah. So, you've also told me that you're like reimagining a world of belonging and justice. Has your music created tangible outcomes in communities? In your community specifically?
Yeah. I mean, I can think back to a concert where, we don't always anticipate when people are going to give us this direct information that your music has changed their life. We're packing up, and this parent came over and said, thank you so much for your songs. We're big fans. We're like, thank you so much for listening. She said, last year we were on vacation, and we were profiled by somebody who started yelling racist things at us. And oh man, we were scared. We were hurt. We went back to our hotel room, and I just turned on Alphabet Rockers, and I played I'm Proud as loud as we could. We sang it. We sang it till it shook. We sang Shine, I Shine, I Shine. And we went back outside, and we had our vacation. And thank you for helping us have a framework. I mean, that's just one example where we were like, wow, I love you. Thank you. And, there's other songs that when we've performed, like Stand Up For You, which is a song that really looks at how and when do you stand up for someone. It's not always like about what you say. It's sometimes about how you hold space with someone. And we know that young people are here for that too. So we've seen that impact in schools in particular.
Okay. So, we've already talked about where artists get their inspiration, but I know that you have a different approach where you use inquiry to kind of spark that conversation. So you talked about your audience and what they bring to it. Do you guys want to elaborate on that? Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit, because I think it's pretty clear, but I mean, we don't take it too far, but we take it pretty far, because, we generate the material and then we pass it back, and it's more of a reciprocal type of cycle. And so that way, when someone says, I see myself in this song, it's because they contributed to it, and then what we've learned is that people who contribute to our songs inadvertently know, and we almost inadvertently know, that they're not the only one, and the message is going to reach someone else that has the exact same sentiment.
That's great. That's great. And that's generally from your local community, right? And that includes generally kids, right? So you work with your young stars, we're calling them, right? So your most
Yep.
recent Grammy award-winning album was The Movement, and that was crafted by your young. All right. Congratulations! That was crafted with those three young stars in mind, and that's Tommy Shepherd the third, T3, right? Is your son, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kali DeJesus and Maya Ray. So let's take a look at this clip here. It's called The Co-Conspirators.
Hey, I'm Maya. I use the gender pronoun she and her, and I'm a singer, songwriter, and dancer in the Alphabet Rockers.
What's up, everybody? My name is Kali, and my gender pronouns are he and him. And I also sing, write, and dance in the Alphabet Rockers.
What's good? My name is Tommy. I go by he, him. I'm a lyricist, and I rap and dance.
I think that just really care and listening to people's voices.
Care and listening to others also works hand in hand with solving biases, learning how to listen to the other side of problems and be able to stop those biases that we have against other people when we can listen to them and hear their point of view.
You can't do anything for the community if, not everyone is willing to wake up and really be open to hearing all of the messages.
You can care for yourself and you can care for other people. When you have somebody else's back, they can have your back. And that's how we watch our community and protect our community.
Family on me, family on three. 1, 2, 3, family!
I love that. So what's inspired Tommy and Kali and Maya to contribute to this movement? I mean, what's their process too? I mean, do they sit down, do they gather with you and come up with the topics they want to cover, take questions from the community, and then where's the music come from? Who contributes to that? Are they all playing?
Right. Okay. So, the impetus for us recreating this way had come from little Tommy coming home from school saying, Dad, what's the N word? He asked the question, what is that? And so, my wife and I didn't think we were going to have that conversation so early, but we did. And so we started to have it, and Kaitlin and I felt it was, I don't know, what's stronger than an obligation to create music to help him get through this, and his friends and his peers. And so that came out. We wrote Shine because of that N-word thing. We wrote another song called Give Me Some Skin because of that. Then Kali and Tommy were just, really starting to see their power and the races that they were. And so they wanted to start to really write songs about their own race. They wrote, the first thing they wrote together was called On the Corner.
Wow.
And it's really about them just being very proud about where they come from and their ancestors, and representing their school and representing their community, and, get my name right. Don't ask me what I am, ask me who I am, and so it just went on from there, and they just kept coming back. We kept writing with them. We kept doing things. And next thing you know, they're on the album. Next thing you know, they are contributing to the albums, to the songs. Kaitlin and I work with the music a little bit, but we work with producers of the music. But they are also in the room when we're working with the kids. Not all the time, but when we get into the studio, they have their own relationships with the producers, with the engineer, their own rapport with them. And they're learning just the same way we are learning how to studio etiquette, how to, what to do when you mess up on the take, all of these things.
That's great.
I feel like with all of the young stars that we work with, and also just our own peers, which are multi-generational, we're not all the same age, the artists that we collaborate with, we do share this practice of it's not about the individual, it is about the collective, and the collective is our audience. And so if we're writing a song just solely for something that we're feeling, and we haven't really checked in with our people in a way, we have to just wonder, is this for Alphabet Rockers, or is this maybe something that we create for something else? Because we really want to create music for the people. And it's not to say that an individual experience is not something that everyone shares, but our young stars on this album, as well as in the Movement Deluxe we worked with, our DJ wrote a piece of spoken word, our choreographer wrote spoken word. We were able to elevate and invite everybody into this relationship with this wonderful opportunity to make music that sparks change.
That's great. Now, I know that we have a little clip here called Strength in Numbers, and that kind of shows part of their process and how they go out into the community asking those questions and creating, it looks like sheets of like music or lyrics. So if we can take a look at that, Ava, that'd be great.
I feel like it's so important that we know about our community and what they need. Our community needs us to do that, and together we need to do that.
Yeah, that's my jam too, because all our work is for all people. I think getting to know and like make connections with the people that we're doing this for is really important. Even if they're not so well known, they're a part of the community, because everybody's opinion matters. Otherwise, it's just biased.
Why would we do this if it wasn't for our community? It's like to impact other people, to make a change for other people.
I love that. That was obviously, was that during COVID? That when yeah. So
Yes.
that was like really like, amazing that they went out into their community and were taking the pulse even at that time, you know. And I know that they usually contribute as a group to each album, but in the movement, you and Tommy mentored Tommy and Maya and Callie to create a lot of their own songs. Can you tell us about the process? Because I would imagine that, you know, there's one female here, and I'll just say that maybe her process is entirely different or her perspective is different, I would imagine. So if you're gonna walk us
Yeah, I mean, everybody learns differently. Everyone expresses themselves differently. So one thing about our practice, like when we work with community, you don't need to sit down and speak to be heard. You don't need to participate in practices that don't reflect your culture. So it's a very like dynamic experience if you ever do a songwriting workshop with us. And we just did one actually for the Children's Music Network, and we shared our process, which is rooting it in a question of what, you know, in the album, we really talked about power. When do we feel powerless in this world? And when do we feel powerful? Because when we know what makes us feel powerful, we can operate from a place of joy, actually, because the things that make people feel powerful were not when I'm singing and people are listening to me. It was when I help my community, when people listen to me. It was a lovely, and that was all generations that answered that question. And so the questions that we helped these three young stars come up with their own questions for a song. And I'll just share that Maya wrote a song called Our Turn. And her question was, what are the ways that privilege shows up in power? Right?
That's
now when she wrote her song, like she's a very serious like writer. So she wrote pretty much the whole lyrics, everything, and brought it to us. And you know, other times people need, like, we kind of play together when we throw paint on the wall together. But she was like, no, this is exactly what I want to say, that the youth have a voice and we need the grownups to really tell us what's going on. So when I think about that and I go back to the question that she wanted to answer, privilege shows up in power when we don't speak about what's happening with our young people. And so this is obviously a cultural choice in each family, because I believe family is a part of culture. And there's an opportunity when our young people want us to share more so that they can be more loving, be more kind, and be more prepared.
Nice. Yeah, you know, we all had that. We all went through the same process because as they wrote their songs, Kaitlin and myself also had our questions. So we all went through the process together and helped each other with demos and things like that. It was cool because, you know, they all had their own separate questions. We all had our own separate questions. Collie's was around government and the use of power they have. And instead of using what they're using the money to support, they should be, you know, supporting a more healthy system. And then Tommy's was about how do we open up people's eyes to someone's internal change. That was directly connected to making mistakes. And he kind of understood the jump between getting in trouble in kindergarten and it affecting you when you get into college, making a small mistake as an adult and you wind up being incarcerated. And if you come out rehabilitated, no one treats you that way, even though you said, I did something wrong and I am sorry for it. and I am repentant for it, and I have rehabilitated. No one treats you that way when you get out. His question was like, why? Why is that?
Right, and that's a question everybody's been asking, frequently asking, because Black boys are treated in our world, you know, and it's like, well, we can go into depth in that, but I think we should see Tommy's video. So, Ava, if you can.
It's called The Change Up.
I wish the prison brain was booked to learn about people's internal change or know what's happening in their brain. They could be learning from what they did or trying to get back to the family at the crib. That's right. As soon as they step on the court, they try to take a charge or ain't pushing them on the floor. They think the perpetrators all hate at the core. Because of their biases, changes get ignored. If you throw us in a cell, lock it, turn off the lights. Mistakes are the spark that make our ideas bright. So even if you turn off the lights, our community will guide us through the night. We know we're left with what's right. Why when you do something wrong, it goes onto your record. Just carrying through your life, not striving to make it better. We need to be clever. Our top leaders are failing us. We're exercising a system where our wrongs are trailing us.
No, man, I'm still so inspired by Tommy Shepherd III. That song is just so rich with poetry. Like if you read that lyric sheet, you would be reading it's so thick with imagery. But I wanted to just say this because it authentically helped me right now. As a parent, I have a 4 and a 7-year-old, and when he talks about mistakes are the things that make our ideas bright. Like I feel like sometimes when we talk about making music and media for children, we forget how much we are evolving. And so what that does for me as a parent, my kid made a mistake yesterday, right? And I really sat with it. I was like, okay, I could send him away from the dinner table right now and make him cry. But what can I do with him that will allow him to understand how it made me feel and make a different choice? And so, I mean, I'm learning this in practice. I'm not saying, but like, honestly, he inspired me because he really asked us to like, not shame people for mistakes and really just investigate what they're trying to learn. And instead, I went in, I was like, can we just go sit down and talk? And we actually snuggled and talked. And he went and cleaned up the mess that he made without me asking. And that's inspired by, Tommy wrote that when he was 13 years old, you know, and our children
Really?
are brilliant and they're able to speak on these levels when we're listening, you know?
So the Change Up was written when he was 13?
Yes.
Wow. That's amazing.
We have a long process when we're writing. It takes a while before it comes out, and it's on purpose because we want to make sure we do it right, and we're doing the community justice.
That's great. And how old is he now? 15 about? Or?
Yeah. Oh, he'll be 16 in 2 weeks or in a week.
Oh my gosh.
Which means Alphabet Rockers is about to be 16. So let's
Oh yeah.
It's a long time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, so you collaborate with children, and I know that you also collaborate with other people in the community, choreographers, other musicians. Can you tell me a little bit about that process, how you draw people in who aren't necessarily part of Alphabet Rockers, but are part of, I guess, what you would call your collective?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, actually, I was thinking, too, like our filmmaker, Nino Fernandez, has been a voice in Alphabet Rockers since 2017, documenting and storytelling and creating media that really holds our energy, our aesthetic, and really the heart of who we are. And our engineers, like one thing about Tommy and I is we're very loyal, but we always have an open circle. So when somebody else comes, we say, join us, you know, you're at the circle. We do the handshake with you too. And there's lots of children's musicians too that are, you know, honorary Alphabet Rockers that are all over the country. Inviting us to be on their podcast, inviting us to do a bridge for them to just help them like find a little bit more energy on their song, or even start from the beginning, like right there in New York when Future was writing, he wanted to write an anthem for Juneteenth, and we went through this process for that song to really think about what do people really need to hear and who needs to tell it, and what are the parts of our own history that we need to crack open so we can really see what's there. And we're just honored that we're doing music at this time with such a vibrant community.
Yeah. And you know, Kaitlin is also the type of person, you might know this type of person, that somebody says that, you know, they want to do something, no matter what it is. And she's like, all right, let's go do it. Like many moments, actually it happened with Maya, started off dancing with us. And Maya one day was like, oh man, I want to sing. Next show, I had a mic, right? That's just like the Kaitlin style. Same thing happened with our choreographer. Choreographer was like, yeah, I'm dancing, but she heard her singing along one day. She was like, oh yeah, you get a mic. And now our DJ has a mic. You know what I mean? So like, and if there's nobody there to do that too, she'll take somebody from the audience and be like, let's go.
Yes.
We're doing this together. You know what I mean? So it's
There's
just
something about like the vulnerability of saying like, I want to hear you, and then everybody feels it inside. Like, I want to be heard. And yeah, as our young people in these videos have grown up, like we're seeing the same energy from people in the audience, and like, join us on stage. You already know the moves. I saw you do it for the first song. And they fully inhabit that. Like, we were at Perlman Arts Center in New York City, and 2 young artists haven't performed before, knew everything. So that is about trust. Like, when people know that you see them, they inhabit the space.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you spoke about Fuge too. So you work with other celebrities as well. Divinity, haven't you worked with Divinity as well?
Divinity Rocks.
Yeah,
definitely.
With Ahmadiyya, that was beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I knew, talking about, I love Fuge's Juneteenth song. I was totally blown away by that, and I think it's like one of those things that should be in like school curriculum, you know? Right? It's like, it explains it so well. So it's really good to hear that you guys are working all together to push all of your missions, really, which is, again, an extended community. You mentioned that you're also doing workshops beyond just, you know, musical workshops, but also you're doing anti-racist centers for children and families. Can you talk about that too, and how your music plays into that?
Yeah, I think it's really important because sometimes, you know, the experts are seen as people who have a degree, and really the experts on our common humanity are people who are living it. And so we've made it intentional to partner with community organizers in Oakland and San Francisco, and then also do this around the country. The call-in is, what do you need to hear? What do you need to see in children's media so that you feel loved, so you feel understood? And sometimes that leads to conversations around what's not happening, like where are you being harmed, that we can possibly help think of the other side of it. And we do this through sharing Post-its. We do anonymous work. We also do interviews, and then we share the music back with folks and say, how does this sound? Does this sound like what you need? Because if it's not, we're going to redo it.
Yeah. One of the songs that we have is a great example of it is You Are Not Alone. There's a particular family that we worked with in writing it. And when we had our first drafts, passed it back, you know, it was very, I don't know what the word, man. It was almost ritualistic, almost even too, because we were just, you know, passing off this information, and it was swirling in a bubble until it came out to a song that they were proud of, that we were proud, that they were proud of. And we felt very strong about putting it out. You know, when it happens that way, that's the right way. There are no wrong ways, but that's really right.
Yeah, and what had happened there was we were really doing learning about gender justice. And I feel like we were doing that right before a lot of voices were really being honored around even naming our pronouns. You see it on the screen.
Right.
What is a way to uphold beyond the binary. And this one family came and they'd written on the wall anonymously that like, as a transgendered boy, I need my friends to stand up for me when I'm not in the room, not just when I'm there. And I think about that a lot, because that's like the work that's not even for kids, right? But that's what kids are thinking about. But for grownups, like, when are you standing up for people? When you've learned something, you might not know the words yet to feel like confident about it, but you know that that person told you it didn't make them feel safe. So like, how do you do that? And that's what we have to do in our meetings. So we have to do that in our songwriting. We have to do that at our schools. And so, yeah.
I mean, just that conversation had, you know, made us write the line, I'll be around even if you don't see me. I'm not afraid to get teased, even if it means standing up for you when they say those hateful things. That really, like, that went way far for me, because then I started to see, like, when you're at home, when you're like visiting relatives, you know, when they say something and it's a little bit not PC or whatever, or a little bit whatever it is, and you just kind of let it go. You know, I was challenging myself to speak up in those moments. And it's hard. I'm still working on that. You know what I mean? But every time I have to be brave and say, you know what? Why do you got to say it that way? You should say it. You shouldn't even say it, or you should try to figure out a better way to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because we know that there are people just being ridiculed, and they're not even there to defend themselves.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned that you bring these families together in the workshops too, and they contribute their thoughts or the topics they want to talk about. I was really, when you were talking to me yesterday, Kaitlin, we were talking about the Post-it notes, and I really love that, because I feel that that's like an anonymous way to just stick that up there, and it's really fun. But you get like honesty and raw feeling and insight into what's going on. And then I guess you can incorporate that into your music. Or your podcast, because you guys are doing a lot of stuff these days.
Yeah.
So you
want
to tell me about some of the live events you're doing in the podcast?
Yeah, definitely. We're grateful because we love performing, and we are still national touring artists. And something special that's happening is, in addition to performing and creating this space for connection, where you can connect your head and heart. That's like kind of at the root of all this of our work. We also work with young stars in different communities. Like last year in New York, we brought high school students and middle school students from New York Edge into our concert. So we trained them in choreography, and we were able to give them the opportunity of like really storytelling on stage with us. And that's a part of our tour and going into 2024.
I think just one insert here, just to interject. We train them on Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah, if anybody could understand how the obstacles.
And also like songwriting, we've actually been brought around the country. Like last year we were in Hawaii on Zoom doing arts education trainings, where it was like, how do we bring this work into your classrooms? Like everybody's got a spark and everyone's got their own way. And when we come in and do a songwriting workshop, it doesn't have to stay in the song. It can become a visual arts, because it's all grounded in questions, right?
Right.
And it's about the process over the product. And I think that people feel relief with that, because so often it's about getting the grades in or the evaluations, but really it's about the connection is what we're trying to encourage. And all of that's matching with our anti-racism frameworks. And there are schools actually that bring us in just to do that, training the teachers on anti-racism work in the classroom. And because a lot of people don't know. I mean, we've been doing this for, our whole lives, but it's like, how do I start? And so we don't actually, thank you for asking, and yes, let's start. It's not like, oh, you're too late, or you're not in the club.
Oh yeah, or it's about time.
It's more like, great, like wonderful. Your children need you and they're ready. So, and one thing that's really exciting is our next project is going to actually bring our work globally. So we're looking for partners in India, South Africa, and Germany specifically to look at like, what is the global soundtrack of belonging? So that's a cool project that we're going to be starting.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of material there too, and given the current state of affairs in this world. So yeah, I think that's amazing. Tommy, I think I remember one of the clips where you were working with kids in drawing, I guess as like part of the inspiration. Yeah. Is that something you pretty much do in every workshop though? You use all those tools, whether it's drawing, dance, music?
Definitely. And some people, we give them the option to only draw if you want to.
Okay.
Because some people are like, I don't write, or I'm not, it's okay. So what do you do? Can you make up a melody? Can you help someone else with their lyrics? Do you want to press play on the music? Do you want to, what I mean? Like, what would you like to do?
I think that's so true, because there's people who they might be a little bit embarrassed that they can't spell in the same way that that people expect them to.
Right.
So they say, oh, I'm not interested. And you say, that's great. Why don't you just hang with me then? And you can help me put this over here. And then they tell you, they already know how to say the song. They write the whole song in their head.
Yeah.
So what are the residencies consist of? What are you doing with those?
Well, residencies are like when we go into a community, either we are giving creative practice or we want to build something with the community. So it really, this is where arts presenters get to really play and really think about what does my community need and how can I use these spark plugs to really do something meaningful. So that's something that we co-design with presence and joy and commitment. So it could be like, let's come in and write a new song for your assembly where the whole school does it. I mean, the sky's the limit. It's just about what we want to do.
Yeah, I don't think we touched upon, you talked about listening circles. Did we talk about that yet?
We kind of danced around the circle.
Yeah, I find that, I find that really interesting that it's like you're taking that to all these cities, and it's, you've gone to McLean, Virginia, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that's part of the impetus. Is that part of like the process? Like it's a listening circle and then it's the workshop. Are they all kind of like intertwined?
Definitely. It's not like separate events.
Okay.
We're always using the phrase listening is love. We practice in listening. Before we get into it, we play a couple examples and we say, what did you hear? What did you see? What visuals did you see as this song played? What stuck out to you?
Right.
What don't you understand? And so that already starts with questions,
Right.
And then, people have different perspectives. So in those places where people have different perspectives is where actual like work and community gets to happen.
Okay.
And I'll say this, like when we started, we told you the impetus for why we made our whole destiny about this. And we also knew that there might be resistance, or we were curious. So we had to listen and see, like, what does this mean to you? If we're going to do this, will you go with us? And so we went to very eclectic circles in Boston, New York, DC, and Oakland, because we had some fellow creatives there and we wanted to know, does this still fit in children's music? Like, and the parents in DC were the ones that like really took us to the limit with it. They were like, we want everything. We want to talk about this. We will play with that, because we use play in our workshops too. And yes, we want to play and we want to talk about that. And here's a question from me. And we were like, okay, this is going to work. And it does. So.
Yeah. Okay. Kaitlin touched on something that I want to mention real quick, Lee, is that that is always a piece of the center is like doing this difficult work with joy.
Joy. Okay.
We always are checking. We are always checking our joy meter.
I like that. That's awesome. So clearly, there's always a message that you're sharing when you compose songs, and you're getting that based on questions from the community. Are there topics that you revisit at all, or?
Yeah, I would say this. Each community we go to, a lot of them have the same questions,
right?
But for different reasons. The questions are always around visibility, about being seen, about identity, and that's another thing that we love about seeing these connections is that the same questions are coming up, but we're answering them in a different way, or we're exploring them in a different way because we don't answer questions. We'll put ourselves out like that, you know what I mean? And so that's really like where that comes from.
And we always make sure to find out like how can we advocate with you, because that storyline is also designed by the community, not by guests of the community, right? I think that was a mistake that white folks made with racial justice, is like, well, let me center my experience and say that everyone's the same without any context of like why it wasn't the same. And we all know why, because we're still living in segregation. So I feel like, and with that also the celebration, like how do you want to celebrate the amazing parts of you? And what's fun, like what I'm looking forward to in our future projects too, is that like that celebration is always going to be tuned into a new frequency, which means a new style of music for us. So I'm excited about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, totally correct on that. We're talking about social change and justice, and I know that's key to your mission, but do you think it's difficult to remind people and pass the torch to a new generation, and even have, like, your young stars are trying to do that from the clip we saw before. They're trying to get that information and pass it on.
Yeah, I would consider a different kind of passing of a torch, because usually when you have the connotation of passing a torch to someone, you're like, okay, now I'm putting the torch down,
right?
And now you're gonna pick it up. But we're lighting torches. You know what I mean? So
never extinguishing, right?
And the fire is the messaging. So when you pass something, you're passing a message that gets to be in someone else's body, and then they pass the message. That is the torch that we feel is being passed.
And one thing we just really grounded ourselves in this fall. Obviously we won the Grammy Award this year, which was a huge deal to our community. Oakland in particular has just stood with us through all our growth and, trumpeted and celebrated and dug in. And we were at a concert, and there were new families, like little babies, and they didn't know who Alphabet Rockers was. And they didn't even know that something like this could exist. And it was a wonderful reminder. And I know the children's media knows this. Every 8 years, we have to find a whole new audience. And for us, it is absolutely a privilege to bring a full breadth of music, of media, of movement and consciousness, because we keep doing the work on ourselves to present and saying, here's a toolbox and we're with you. And the families are just like, wow, like, this is for me. And so my invitation to everyone in the Children's Media Association is like, how can we grow with you? How can we really build this toolbox for distribution together? Because the babies keep entering this world, and the world does get more complex. And I think that it's something that we don't want to do this alone. And we want to open our circle, and we want to be in yours.
Well, you're here now. You're kicking off this series. So we're on the same page. So in addition to creating the music, you kind of branched out to other types of media. Is this an extension of your mission?
I feel like it's all connected. And I know what you're getting at. So
yeah. Well, I'm going to share that for you. I just want to show you everybody a clip from their new animation. And if Ava, if you could roll that for us.
Oh, Tay, you hear that?
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty dope sound, Flority.
Yeah, and then it's...
Throw a little rhythm on it. Ooh, it's the next tough pupil song.
Yes, I like it. I bet it could be about... Oh, wait a second. Whoa.
What's up?
The pizza spot just texted me and asked me if I wanted pizza.
Did your phone read your mind?
I'm saying, how did they know I wanted pizza? And did I give them my number?
Well, we do always order from there around this time.
True. Last week we ordered pizza during practice.
Yep, Thursday, right?
Yeah, and it looks like the pizza spot remembered that.
Ooh, they must have saved your phone number from when you called in the order.
Bet they have data about us. We left a trail, huh? Well, here we go.
Data, things known or assumed as facts. Footprints that we leave as tracks. Let me get it. That's data. Information that you put in and out. Data helps predict how I react. Let me tell you, that's data. Can't erase what you drop in the chat. Data lets people know where we're at. Data, just like a digital map, connects trails of facts. My data's mine. Do we have control of that?
So I was rocking out over
it. I swear, I love that whole episode. I haven't watched the whole series yet, but I was watching that. It was really great. Are you guys voicing that? Are you doing voiceover for that? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's so.
Yeah, we worked with Sarah Lefton, who's wonderful producer, animation producer, and she recruited us right before COVID, and she'd been a fan of ours. Again, I'm saying the Bay Area was just like, oh, you guys are amazing. And I remember when Tommy was like, Kaitlin, this is going to be so aligned with what we're doing, because we're going to be, it's everything, man. We're answering these great questions from scientists. The scientists we work with really had very outlined points that we needed to create creative content with, down to like, you can't personify data, because we wanted to be like, data does this and data be like this. And they're like, no. But we love that, because that's the same cycle that we go through with our community, is like, okay, that's not honoring you, actually.
Right.
I mean, they weren't that hurt about it, but if
Yeah. Except for when you pronounce how you pronounce data or data, like, they were really serious about that.
Were they really? What was the pronunciation of that? Was it data?
It's data.
Yeah, that's what
yeah, and I feel like it's just a reminder that like when we like how playful it is to create, and that is just pure joy. And in the playfulness, we just feel like we get spaciousness. And so we always play games before our sessions because we need to be in our place of abundance and not in a place of fear. All creatives do. And when you're tackling big topics, it's even more essential so that you can find out what's really clean energy coming out.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can probably take some questions at this point. Ava, do you want to read one of those off for us? What is next for you? What do you want to explore next with the young stars?
Thank you for that question.
You want to take part 1 and I'll take part 2?
Oh, thanks, Fran. Okay. I mean, I'm really enjoying investing myself in finding more sparks. You know, we don't want to be the only, and we don't consider ourselves the only, but when we see other writers and creatives being like, I want to go deep on that, that feels like success to the mission. And then in terms of our own creative practice, like really learning about how from voices around the world, how climate change and colonialism and colorism are affecting young people. And so I know that's way dense, and we haven't even like explored into it to get the Post-it bits, but
right.
I feel like it's going to make us even more present and thoughtful.
Awesome.
Yeah, and there's definitely going to be some intersections for us to play in between those three, between that trifecta. And then what's next with the young stars is, you know, sky's the limit, honestly. They all have careers or are building careers in the arts. Maya's building an acting career, and Kali and Tommy are building music careers in jazz music.
Wow.
And so we just kind of want to be there to support them the way they support us. You know, they're going to be creating their own artist profiles and, you know, beginning to put their own stuff up. And, you know, they're just going to be part of the family always, whether they are continuing to perform with Alphabet Rockers or not. You know, they're shaping up to be artists that we would hire later on anyway to come in and sing some stuff with us. You know what I mean? So, you know, it's all going to be a win-win for them. We're just going to be there to support them in whatever they want to do.
And one thing that was cool, right after the Grammy, when we received a grant to make music videos for each of their songs, and we worked with our producer, Nino Fernandez, as well as Youth Beat, which is a youth-led media production company here. So that's been amazing to watch them direct their own music videos. And that is a skill, as you know, that you carry through your whole life. And so I imagine they'll be dropping in with the Children's Media Association or other folks to tell their story in the same way. Like, here's why I want to tell this story, and here's what you can do today. So that's what I'm hoping for them to.
Okay, good. I have another question for you from somebody. They wanted to know, how do you think traveling has changed your perspective on the styles that should be presented?
What does style mean?
I'm not sure if it type of music. I'm trying to figure that one out myself.
I see.
Well, I think the most important thing is like when we, like the Bay Area is seen as being like, I'm sure y'all have your own labels about who we are and how we, you know, have all these shared values. But like what I know is when I travel around the country and we find folks with the same spark, and it's really important for us to see connection, and that it shows up in different ways, but that there are good-hearted people who are like filled with love, and the answers are not coming from just one ivory tower. No, the answers are everywhere, you know, and that love is everywhere. And so that to me is a confirmation, I guess, that we're in the right place, but it's also, you know, you want to continue to get to know people in that way as well. So that changes you.
Yeah, and as far as like on the technical side of that, you know, we're hip hop. We're hip hop genre. We, but if you know anything about hip hop, they take from everything. So
No, exactly.
when we're in the classrooms, we usually when we're like writing songs together, we don't usually make the music with instruments. I beatbox, and I have a looper. And sometimes I will put some melody to the beats, and they will come up with melody surrounding that. So sometimes a song will become a power ballad. Sometimes it'll be a rap. Sometimes it'll sound like a rock song or a country song, but it's all like based in like the beat, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of different like hip hop songs that are based in other cultures too. They're a combination of Indian music or even like Irish music. Like there's always some sort of like twist, which I think is really amazing to kind of bring that all in there, especially also Latin music as well. But I just want to give you some of the comments that I'm seeing here online. Yes, Kaitlin, skin color is not dangerous, and it is okay to talk about it. Gail said it's music that elevates for sure. And Evan says this is amazing. It's the power of music. You guys are generous of spirit, and music is a universal language and can strengthen children's self-esteem. Love this. Bravo.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, you have some really great.
It's so wild that somebody mentions that about music, because I kind of forgot to come back to that. And thank you for saying that, because when we said, oh, we're going to talk about this situation that happened with this kid talking to us about skin color, we met with Dr. Allison Briscoe-Smith, who's an advisor at Nickelodeon's diversity initiatives. She's a friend of mine from college, and I just saw her speak at something, and I was like, can we just interview you and talk to you? And she said, Kaitlin, if you write songs anchored in these values, this will be exactly what children need. Because when music, and this keeps coming up every time we drop in with, you know, the scientists about music, the education about music, and all the folks watching right now, music does something where it actually creates like a throughway of like repetition, you know, in your body that allows you, if you're hearing non-truths about who you are, racism or sexism or whatnot, or even things about other people, it's actually realigning you to say like, that's not actually the way I'm going to go. And so we worked with this, I mean, now I'm going to start name dropping because there's just so many beautiful people, but Dr. Ashanti Branch, who runs 100K Masks, which is a national movement for specifically boys to take off the mask and actually express their true feelings. The reasoning for that is because of not feeling safe to be vulnerable. For many reasons, racism is at the core of that, as well as sexism. I believe sexism is informed by racism. And when he sat down with us, he said, Kaitlin, you guys, it's about connecting our head and our heart. And he said, when you do that, you're able to break through. And so, you know, then we played the song where we said, connect your head and heart, because that is where it starts. And then we added, slow down, connect in every part. And that's an invitation, because I'm going to get kind of serious about it, but in white supremacist culture, we move really fast because we want to know the answer. And actually, when our knowing bodies is actually our physical body, right? It's not just up here. So he gave us this invitation that we ran with. So that's what I'm saying. If you drop in with us on a Post-it or conversation, you change our lives. And then that music we create, we hope is like truly a throughway for just the imagination of love and possibility and belonging.
Yeah, totally agree.
Did that.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys so much, Kaitlin, Tommy, for sharing your story with us tonight. Really powerful and empowering. And I wish you so much luck in the future. I'm sure we'll be talking soon. And I want to remind our audience, CMA has more great programming on the calendar for next week. And we hope that you can join us again. And have a great night. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Kaitlin.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. And thank you, Karen Martin, for the hard work you put in. You're the best.
Thank you. Thanks, Tommy.